million population into no housing. When the court summons you when this fiction court summons you to come to court, they're asking you to leave the Hawaii territory. The courthouse is a foreign vessel in dry dock. Now, we had a federal courthouse here in Maui in Wailuku Heights. It was built in 1888, about the same time securitized-backed assets were authorized. It was the original post office turned into the federal courthouse. And did you know that on March 8th, 2013, Hawaii became a sovereign country? It is no longer in bankruptcy with any country on planet Earth. On January 6, 2008, is when we filed the Quantumized Constitution, which I wrote for the Hawaiian Kingdom, and 22 Koponas signed it. It was presented to the World Court at The Hague, and it was authorized to be a correct written document. 3 days later, under the rescission law, all banks in Hawaii that were offshore from foreign governments left the islands. We have not had offshore banking since January 9th, 2008, to show you that you were always sovereign. Now, in 1893, when Hawaii, January 17th, 1893, Hawaii was invaded by the United States. Queen Iolani was a 34-degree Eastern Star working for the Mason across the street at Lodge Number 1. And so when the senior Mason, who was the Postmaster General of Hawaii, told Queen Iolani to stand down, because the Mason, the Master Mason, captain of the military ship coming here from the United States, told him that he had orders to take over the Hawaiian Islands. She had to stand down and surrender Hawaii. But what was the condition of Hawaii? Hawaii filed bankruptcy with the World Bank out of Switzerland and the Rothschild family on the 22nd of October, 1871. Hawaii was under bankruptcy protection. And the United States was under bankruptcy protection from the IMF. How does the bankrupt corporation called the United States of America invade the bankrupt corporation of the state of Hawaii, or the Hawaii territory? It can't. Totally illegal. Has been illegal the whole time. The United States of America came out of bankruptcy on November 2nd, 1999, and for 1 year under maritime law of salvage plus a 90-day federal law did not exist. The United States did not elect a president in 2000. They had to wait 90 days counting ballots, and on February 2nd, 2001, they became the United States of America Corporation. Anybody could have ran for president and been elected as president of the United States. Bush was appointed. But now, the United States is out of bankruptcy, but Hawaii is still in bankruptcy. A sovereign country can't invade a bankrupt corporation. Hawaii should have been vacated on February 2nd, 2000, but they weren't. So there's a lot of international law violations taking place here. A lot of maritime law violations taking place here. And we articulated and wrote contracts to these effects, and we filed them at the World Court at The Hague. In 1997, I was commissioned by the Koponas to write contracts mathematically certified frontwards and backwards. I'm not allowed to interfere with any religion, customs, policies, only to make sure that the math was correct. And then when we presented and did seminars for the people of Hawaii and showed them how grammar has to be so mathematically perfect that it can't be modified, written frontwards or backwards, it says the same thing. We had to certify as a group with 22 Koponas, and we all worked together for months to make sure that every sentence that had to be said was said and presented in this Constitution. When it was sent to The Hague only took 5 days of looking at what was correct and said the Hawaiian people are now correct. They have a constitution that is correct. And therefore, they have their independence. They don't need somebody babysitting them like the United States. Even though we use the United States dollar here, we still have a constitution that says we can read and write, and all the documents that have been filed since those days have been all written in the correct parsing syntax grammar. And we continue to police fraudulent grammar like this and bring it to trial. We contact the Department of Justice, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Consumer Fraud Protection Bureau out of Iowa City, Iowa, the postal inspectors, criminal division in Chicago, because these things go through the United States Priority Mail as fraudulently conveyed documents. You know what they say? These are not government employees, therefore we don't have any jurisdiction. The least common denominator between all these things is the American flag. The FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the KGB, yeah, we send stuff to Russia. In 1998, shut down the entire postal service in the United States for 2 years, for 2 whole weeks. Because the Russians came back and said, hey, we got a document here that's written in the correct parsing syntax grammar, translated in the Russian in the correct parsing syntax grammar. In 6 weeks after that, Russia collapsed. The Senate, the Congress, the legislature of Russia were taken over by the KGB, and the Supreme Court were all put under arrest because of false and misleading statements. These documents, when they saw them, changed the entire politics, and the Cold War ended. And Russia became a capitalist country like the US. That was the first one to go down. When the United States government saw this here, the only thing they keep doing is we're asking the criminals to police the criminals. But if you look at their oath of office for all these different divisions, they're written in adverb verb, italicized and placed into a box, which say nothing. So they're not authorized to carry a gun or a badge, because of the fictitious conveyance of language that they have perpetrated on the American people. And to make sure that the American people can't read and write, they hire a principal, PRI, no contract individual, to run roughshod over all the teachers of that institution to make sure that they do not teach the students the correct parsing syntax grammar, so that when they graduate from school, they can be harvested. Anybody that had a 4.0 student grade point average, you knew that they were lying better than anybody else, or could be brainwashed better than anybody else. And the guy that was flunking, his brain wouldn't accept an adverb verb lie. And that's why 38% of the students quit high school, because they will not accept a lie and they don't want to be brainwashed down that far. So what's happening today is my website, the website is dwmlc.com. Has 5 billion people on it studying how to use the correct parsing syntax grammar, and over 400 pages of testimony. So what we have here is we have corrected, positively identified how we are being cheated. We have the forensic evidence, and we have the court system, the Federal Postal Court, now established so that we can take and bring correctness to our world of contracts. And if you've been listening to the political agendas that are happening and what's going on in the newspapers of Hawaii coming up to our election, it shows that they are fully aware that Hawaii became sovereign on March 8, 2013. On March 11th, 2013, 170,000 tons of gold bullion was moved into Honolulu, putting back the gold that was taken out on October 22nd, 1871 by the World Bank to make Hawaii the new central bank of the Pacific. So there's going to be a lot of changes happening in the near future here. So we have an election coming up, and our politicians are becoming aware of what's available. They're becoming aware of this grammar. They're becoming aware of the sovereignty. And little by little, they're starting to speak out, and it's showing up in the newspapers. So I think by the time the election rolls around, we'll have enough educated people to stop and correct the wrongs that are going on out here. Stop the foreclosures that have taken place. 4 years ago, I filed a lawsuit at the federal court, and we froze all foreclosures in the Hawaiian Islands for 15 months because they knew they were wrong. There are no titles in Hawaii. There have never been titles in Hawaii since 1800. So how can they sell, how can they advertise and say that they have a title to the property and use it as a verb and use the word true and correct when this is a bold-faced lie? This is perjury. So this law firm is being prosecuted. This law firm asked for $20,000 in royalties to justify this and get paid for this, and we are suing them for false and misleading statements for $25 million and a $80,000 violation of what they're at through mail fraud, because under Title 15, 1639A, they have to pay 4 times damages for how much they're trying to extort through the Rescissions Act. So, I haven't brought up any names here today as far as specific organizations go, because this is only about the parse syntax grammar. So we've used a little bit of generalities to show you exactly what the mechanics are as we move forward. Also, we have, you can look on the board over here, we had summoned 14 different government officials. The police chief here in Maui, several of the judges and the attorneys who have committed the fraud. We have the forensic evidence in front of us. And by bringing this to the table today as a federal postal court, we ask them to attend today to answer why they're supporting this document and accepting this language to be a fraud. Why are you using fraud and damaging and taking homes from people that you don't have title to, that the bank does not have standing for? And I have you can see through this plastic container here. This is how much paperwork one lawsuit has generated in 1 year. That's over 1,000 sheets of paper. Every lawsuit that we do, we not only syntax the material, write a lawsuit that goes to the Department of Justice. We answer the lawyers, we prosecute the lawyers for the wrongs that they are doing, trying to steal the property, and we continue to, this goes back and forth every 45 days, where we sue them and they come back and they want to get paid for their violations. So we sue them again. And this goes on and on and on. Well, we have unlimited funds and deep pockets to prosecute these people for the crimes that they are perpetrating against the Hawaiian people and people of the United States. The people that were summoned today, none of them showed up. I know who they are, and none of them came today. You can look at the documents on the board there to see who was summoned. We have the green card return receipts for all of them, that they were asked to be here today to answer why they're using fraudulent conveyance of language to extort property from the people, and they failed to show up today. So there will be a follow-up lawsuits presented to the Department of Justice. This may be a community center, but it is also the federal postal court today, because this is a real court. This is a real, these are correct facts. Not real, but correct. Federal postal court, and I have authorization as a federal postal judge to tip staff, sheriffs, and a tip staff is an officer of a federal court to go out and make arrests. The tip staff must also know how to read and write in the correct parse syntax grammar. Their guys don't. I know they don't. I've already questioned them. They don't even know what the definition of the word tip staff means. And when I went out and I questioned them, they're like deer in a headlight. So we have to get educated individuals that are willing to participate and become party to the tip staff in authorization. Now there's different organizations that are forming, but if you form an organization or a police organization in adverb verb, in other words, in this kind of grammar, you do not have authorization. You're just another fiction suing another fiction, and the bigger fiction with guns and clubs are going to go ahead and take you into custody because you committed fraud under Title 18, 1001, and Title 15, Section 1692E. We have the upper hand at this time because we have a signed confession from every single judge, attorney, lawyer. I currently hold warrants on 33 judges of the 92 judges here in the Hawaiian Islands. Volition. Okay, the volition, as I started before, was a person wishes to gain shelter, and the only thing they know how to do is to go to a bank and borrow money, but they don't know that the bank is not lending them their money, in other words, the bank's money, but going into their Social Security account to take their money out using a fraudulent document. So there's no closure for the volition of the crime of bank fraud that is being perpetrated on the individual wanting to borrow money. You are both the borrower and the lender, but the way it happened was a lie. Who committed the first crime, you or the bank? Well, the answer is clear, the bank. Because the bank created the document, the bank took it in and took the money out of the Treasury. The Treasury is controlled by the Post Office. The Post Office controls all military branches in the government, Homeland Security, Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, police forces, sheriff's departments. They're all controlled by the Post Office. Now, the Post Office controls the Department of Transportation, which controls the port authorities. The port authorities control foreign vessels in dry dock. All courthouses in the United States are foreign vessels in dry dock. Now, because they have handicap ramps in every single courthouse in America, that means they are under treaty as a foreign entity to not disable the public. Disability comes under Title 29, Section 701 of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So they are under treaty not to disable you and your ability to communicate in court. If you only speak Hawaiian or Filipino or Chinese or Japanese, and the judge is speaking in English, he must bring a translator into the courtroom. They do follow that procedure. But when they write in this manner, both the mortgage contracts and the attorneys bring in this type of grammar, fraudulent grammar, to prosecute you for nothing, saying nothing, with no laws, rules, regulations, or codes, and you can't read and write, so you don't know any better. And they've got you so scared, they traumatize you with 10 times more made-up charges when there was no charges in the first place about anything. But we have their signed confession for the criminal activity that they're perpetrating. But where are they doing that? They're doing it in a foreign vessel in dry dock. So if you've got a Chinese freighter out here in the harbor, with a Chinese flag on it, that represents a foreign country. What would happen if any of you walked onto that freighter and you didn't have a seaman's pass, you didn't have your immunization medical files with you that says you have no contagious diseases, that you did not have a bill of lading to enter that vessel with a contract that pays for the bill of lading or a ticket to be on that freighter, you would be arrested for trespassing, put in the brig, taken back to China, and spend 8 years in jail. Well, what do you think happens when you walk into this box, into the foreign vessel? The bill of lading for your ticket is written in adverb verb with 400 mistakes on it. So the only thing that they can charge you with when you walk into the courthouse is that you are a derelict vessel trespassing on their courthouse property. And you know what's the one thing standing in front of the judge? Your body trespassing with babble communications and no written contract. So they say, how much money can you afford to pay to walk out of our trespassing charge? And that's the long and the short of it, folks.
Why do they keep getting away with it, though? Yeah.
Because they're on a foreign vessel in dry dock. You're in their territory. You left the Hawaii Islands. You're in a foreign vessel, same as you'd walk into a different country's freighter sitting out in the harbor here.
But like today, like say for these guys that didn't show when he was summoned, if I didn't show up to their summons, I have a warrant for my arrest now.
Not necessarily. If you read the paperwork, it says, we may, and may is a future tense adverb, which means it doesn't exist in now time, it's in the future. And so what they're doing is they're issuing an adverb verb document, just like this is. their warrant is written all in boxes and written in adverb-verb communications. So if you sue the warrant for fraud and misleading statements using a quo warranto complaint written in the correct parse syntax grammar, the court loses jurisdiction while engaged in criminal activity under Title 18, 1001, Title 18, 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, and Title 15, Section 1692E for false and misleading statements. They lose jurisdiction under Title 42, 1988 for committing a crime, and under Title 42, 1986, which is knowledge of the crime, did not stop and correct it. So therefore that makes them all who participated and signed the warrant to be co-conspirators under Title 18, 241 and witness each other under conspiracy, which carries a 10-year, $10,000 fine for each one that would sign and witness. So we have organized crime acting as the police force or as the judiciary here on the island. Because I would have to syntax what has done wrong, write the lawsuit under quo warranto, and then send it to the court to show them the criminal acts that they did, send it to the police department, file a claim with the sheriff's department that the court has issued fraudulent documents, and then notify the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. that organized crime has taken over our courts. Okay? That's black and white, folks. I can't get any clearer than that. What they're going to do is they're going to come back and say, we cannot understand what is correct. We can only understand what is fiction. And if you believe that, then they're going to want you to participate with their fiction. Don't. You can continually sue them for the correct parse syntax grammar for the avoidance of perjury. And they can't ask you to commit perjury or join with their perjury because that's a crime. All right? Your volition, folks, when you go to get something, there's a thing called closure. Under maritime law of contracts, you must have closure for the word terms in the documents, for the criminal charges or what the laws are in the documents. In other words, you have to have a dictionary attached to your document. You cannot, if you have abbreviations, they have to identify what the abbreviations mean. It has to be all written out in the correct parse syntax grammar, not adverb verb. So don't think that you are at fault. You have to push them to give you closure on everything they do or they do not have jurisdiction. And if you syntax any orders or any judgments, the word judgment means opinion. An opinion is not a fact. The word order is ORD, a vowel and two consonants. It means no contract. It's written in the same format of no contract language. So if you continually sue them to be correct, they have to vacate. Any other questions? Well, we have a Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, uniform commercial.
So look at the second page in paragraph C and see if they have.
C is the lender.
C is the lender?
Yeah, on this one. And this lender is in bankruptcy and has been out of business since 2005. When you hand me a document, I also go in and I research the history of that lender to see who bought them and how many times they've been traded. And my own parents, my mother and father, their home was bought and sold 14 times in 12 years. They never knew who actually owned the house. I mean, who they had a mortgage with. And even though they never missed a mortgage payment, according to the fifth person who had bought it and traded 5 times before their payment from number 1 got to number 5, started foreclosure because they never got the money was forwarded to them. Even though they kept selling the mortgage over and over and over again, so they buried it. The point I'm trying to make here is that the document was written 40 million times to be fraud so that they go out and harvest the people. This was a setup from the get-go. MERS filed bankruptcy in 2002, never paid money, never received money, and never signed a contract. When the Department of Justice went to MERS for bank fraud, they said, for what? We never signed a document. They were using our name And we're in bankruptcy. We don't have any connection with any of the banks since 2002. They reformulated in Delaware in 2012. But they still have not signed any mortgage contracts. They do not take money or pay money. They have no continuance of evidence to be appointed. That would be like me appointing the cameraman here to sell your house because I appointed him to sell your house even though there's no continuance of evidence. And then he gets to keep the money because I appointed him. That would be completely crazy.
Gee, how can you be a nominee and a mortgagee?
Can't. They can't be the mortgagee for the simple reason they never signed anything.
But that would just be another layer of fraud.
It's just another layer of fraud that they put on there to confuse a person who doesn't know what's going on. And you went out and you sued MERS, and the judge comes back and says, well, you sued MERS and they're not here in court today, so we got to continue this or we can't move forward. The judge fully knows that none of MERS has never existed in the first place. I can stop you right there because that is written just like this sentence up here. If I syntax that specific law and it has not been corrected in the correct parse, syntax, grammar, and now time, all 4 billion laws written in the United States codes say absolutely nothing. When I presented that to the federal court about 30 years ago, the court came back and said, all the codes in the United States, all 4 billion of them, are only suggestions by which we as judges have to make determinations. And because we are the foreign vessel in dry dock, we get to say that 3 + 3 = 7, or 8, or 9, or 20, or anything we want it to be. They just make it up as they go along. And I've been in so many courts where the judge says to me, David, we know who you are. We know that you do syntax. We know you're a federal postal judge, but you're in my vessel now, and I'm the king of my vessel, and I will determine who lives and who dies in my vessel. And I will make any law I want on my vessel. That's what these judges tell me when I walk into the courthouses. And yet, here in Hawaii, when I sit in the courtroom, I've seen 12 felony cases get a $20 court cost and walk out the door just because I'm sitting there. Because they don't want to perform a crime in front of me, because when I walk out the door, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to syntax it, I'm going to drop a lawsuit on them, and they're going to look really foolish committing treason against the people. It's not worth it. Question?
Where can we learn or start to learn how to park?
Okay, DWMLC.com has all the mechanics written down in over 400 pages of text. You can also go on the internet, type in David Windmiller videos, and there's over 200 hours of videos from our seminars. I've done 2,500 live seminars, TV, radio, internet broadcasts, live seminars where I come out. We did one, I think it was 4 years ago, over in WYNN. We had 504 people show up at the gym at the high school. And that was when we announced the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Islands, when we found that we broke the code on when Hawaii became, when it all started, when the bankruptcy started. All right, but that's about it, folks, for our court today.